Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel for those of you who are new. So today I'm going to be talking about intelligence and like what intelligence is and how it's measured. I feel like a lot of people have heard of IQ and just know that it has to do with, maybe how smart people are, but people don't know much else besides that. So I thought this would be a pretty interesting video for anyone who, might be pursuing a career with intelligence testing, or you're just interested in IQ. So just a little bit of background on me first. I'm a school psychologist. I have been for almost a year now. And one of the main things that I do as a school psych is I test kids' cognitive ability, which is also known as intelligence. And I do that for, students who potentially need more support in school, whether that's special education or a Section 504 plan. And it can also be, intelligence testing can also be used to identify students who are gifted, who might have a very high IQ and need some enrichment program in school. So that's the main thing that I do as part of being a school psych. And I also used to work with all ages. I used to be in a neuropsychologist office and I would test for neuropsychologists. I would test from ages 5 to 95. People would come in and the main thing that we would do is an intelligence test along with other testing. So I would say I've tested probably at least 300 people's intelligence in my life. So I feel like I have some good knowledge behind it, and I hope that you guys find this video interesting. So without further ado, let's get started. So one really common question regarding intelligence is how is it defined? And that's tricky because it really depends who you talk to. I would say intelligence is a very broad construct that has a number of definitions. But basically, intelligence involves different mental abilities. And, for example, problem solving. A lot of the intelligence tests have to do with looking at visual information and being able to solve patterns. And that has a lot to do with problem solving, the use of logic. Are you able to think abstractly? So it involves a lot of different mental abilities. Your working memory. So are you able to remember numbers that I say to you and then manipulate them and say them back? So it involves a lot of different things. So just a little bit of background to get started about where intelligence testing even began. The first major intelligence test was developed in the early 1900s by a guy named Binet in Europe. And then it was later brought over to America. They kind of revised, certain men revised the IQ test to be more normed for the American population. And there's definitely been controversy throughout the years with intelligence testing. So for example, I know that immigrants who came to Ellis Island years ago, they were tested upon arrival and they didn't even speak the language and they were still tested in English. So a lot of them obviously did very poorly, but it was just assumed that, that was their intelligence, even though they didn't speak English. So that's, I think, where intelligence testing gets a bad rep, because it was used very wrongly back in the day. But, as the years have progressed, a lot of these intelligence tests have been revised and there's brand new intelligence testing and different theories around it. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically one of the most common intelligence tests today, and I use it all the time, is the Wechsler scales. I would say that's probably one of the most widely used in the US. I'm not sure about other countries, but definitely it's been one of the most widely used since it was first developed. And the Wechsler focuses on 4 major areas, technically 5, but I'm just gonna put 2 together to make it easier. So the first area that we usually assess for a student's intelligence is verbal abilities. So is a student able to define words that I'm asking them to define that are age appropriate? And I'll give them like 2 words that are alike, and the student has to tell me how they're alike. For example, if I ask how 3 and 4 are alike, they would have to say they're both numbers. And then they get more complex as you go on, and you know, depending on how old you are. So verbal ability is the first thing that most intelligence tests look at. The next area that's usually measured in most intelligence tests is your nonverbal ability. And this is especially important for students with like communication issues, or students who, you know, are on the autism spectrum. So a lot of the nonverbal intelligence subtests, you know, you have to show the child or adult patterns, and they have to identify how to solve the pattern. So that again has a lot to do with like the ability to use logic and problem solve, because they're given 5 options, so they're slowly breaking down which one makes the most sense there. The third area that most intelligence tests look at is your working memory. So it's a little bit different than short-term memory. So short-term memory, I might just say, you know, remember this phone number and say it back to me in like 2 minutes. And working memory, on most tests, we're asking you to manipulate the information more. So I might ask you to say, I might say a series of numbers, and then you have to say them backwards. So you have to remember what I say and manipulate that information. So that's like in the moment, you have to remember it and then recall it. It's really important for students, especially like if a student is struggling with working memory and, you know, they're in a classroom of 25 other kids, then it's going to be probably hard for them to remember like what the teacher said, and they might not be able to follow along as well as their classmates unless the teacher is like giving them more check-ins or writing down the instructions in addition to saying them. The fourth most common area that's usually part of intelligence tests is processing speed. So that is how quickly and accurately you can do simple tasks. And like it has to do a lot with just processing information. So I'll give a school example again. If a teacher asks a question and, you know, students are expected to raise their hand and answer, some students might take longer to even process what the teacher's saying, never mind think of an answer and then raise their hand. So I used to notice that all the time in class. Some kids would just need more time, and then others would like shoot their hand right up. So we all process information at slightly different rates. So those are the 4 major areas that a lot of intelligence tests measure. And I gave a couple of the school examples too. This way you could see like why we do intelligence testing for students, because in the end, all 4 of those areas do relate to their academic achievement in some way. So I hope this video answered some of your questions about IQ, what it is, how we measure it, and what we measure it with. If you guys have any extra questions, please leave them below in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you're new. I'm gonna be coming out with videos every week. And until then, I will see you guys very soon. Bye.